My name is Amy, this is Amy in Progress, and today I would like to talk about Millie Marotta. There are a number of people in the colouring community that, when asked, will say Millie's artwork isn't for them. And I just want to preface this by saying that that is completely valid. I am not here to tell you that your opinion is wrong, but I am hoping to offer another perspective. And who knows, maybe that will encourage you to give her another try. So basically, think of this as a sales pitch, or in other words, hear me out. So I will start by talking to you a bit about who Millie Marotta is and what her artwork is like. And just aside, the pictures included in this presentation that I've put together are all available as free downloads on Millie's website if they don't have a copyright mark on them. If they do have a copyright mark on them that I've added, that means that I've taken it directly from the book. And I just wanted to be transparent about that because I don't want people to think that I'm like plagiarizing or whatever. So, the books. There are currently 9 original books plus 3 compilation books for 12 books total. So that's Animal Kingdom, Tropical Wonderland, Wild Savannah, Curious Creatures, Beautiful Birds and Treetop Treasures, it's a bit of a mouthful, Woodland Wild, Secrets of the Sea, Island Escape, and Precious Planet. And compilation books are Wildlife Wonders, Brilliant Beasts, and Animal Adventures. They were first published with Animal Kingdom in 2014, and since 2014, Millie has sold over 10 million books worldwide. Now, Johanna Basford, for comparison, has sold 25 million. However, 10 million is definitely nothing to sniff at. They've been translated into 30 different languages. They've never gone out of print because they are so popular. And they are available in multiple formats such as pocketbooks, postcard books, deluxe editions. There is also a new book coming out this year called Tiny Animal Kingdom, which will make the 10th original book in her collection for 13 books total released. So the original books have 86 to 88 pages each. The compilation books have Wildlife Wonders has 120 pages, Brilliant Beasts has 108 pages, and Animal Adventures has 118 pages. The books are double-sided, they have no borders, they have a variety of single page, double page, complete the page, and simple detailed side-by-side pages. And they include at the back of each book a comprehensive list of the animals and plants that are included in all of the pages so that you can look up what it is that you're colouring. Now, when it comes to page styles, there are a number of different types. The first and probably most recognisable type is the floral portrait, which is the outline of an animal made up of leaves and flowers. And I've attempted to do a bit of wizardry on this to make examples that I've coloured in appear. So these are examples that I've coloured. And then another type is the standard portrait. So that's images like this one, animal/plants or animals in various poses. There's no background and minimal additional props. So it's usually just the animal on its own on the page, or maybe at most there'll be like some rocks for it to stand on. So these are some good examples. You've got some crocodiles that I coloured fairly recently and a snail that I did a couple of years ago. And then the next type is what I call the motif portrait, which are animals or plants and animals in various poses that have decorative borders or framing. So for example, you can see that these rufous-backed kingfishers are sitting on a decorative array of plants, and this faded whale in the background has got like a motif of ocean and a bit of sun. And then the coloured versions of those, that is still a work in progress. It's been a work in progress for a year now, unfortunately. I do need to finish that one. Okay, and the next image type is a full scene. So this is a bit of a crossover with the motif portrait, but you'll find that the difference here is that the animals exist inside the environment, whereas on the motif portrait, like there might be an environment, but the animal isn't necessarily a part of it, if that makes sense. So for example here, you've got the frog and it's actually sitting on the rocks and there's a sky. And this cat in the background is standing on rocks over a river and there is plants and stuff in the background. Whereas you compare that to the whale, there's no environment that would look like the way that the waves were shaped around the whale. So that's the difference. And then here is the coloured version of that frog that I did. And then the last page style that I'll just go over briefly, I don't have an uncoloured example to show you as a free page. However, I do have a coloured version. So these are like the mandala and wallpaper type pages. So they're animals or plants that are arranged in a repeating pattern to form either a mandala, which is usually a round circular image with a repeated pattern in segments, or a wallpaper effect, which is what's shown here. So next up, I just want to go over portrait types. So the first one we've got is the headshot, which is just the head of the animal staring into your soul. It's literally face on, just the head, nothing else. And then the next type is a partial body. So the focus is often on the head, or maybe the head and the upper body, but it's in a more dynamic pose rather than just being face on. And then you've got the full body, which again, it can be in a dynamic or a static pose. And then the more unusual portrait types that Millie has in her books include mirror images, which could be considered as similar to a mandala, but rather than it being like going round in a circle, it's just like the one section. So it's typically one animal that's been mirrored. And I mean, you can see here, if you were to stick a line down the middle, both sides would be the same, just mirrored. And then the other type is the simple versus detailed, which, as you can see from this example, you have one that's got all of her usual line work in, and then another where she's actually removed it, so it's a far simpler design. And just to do a brief analysis comparing her oldest book to her newest book, Animal Kingdom had a lot of double wallpaper pages, 9 in total, which is obviously 18 of the 88 pages because it's 2 pages. She also had a larger focus on the floral portraits and on standard portraits where the animal was just by itself with no other details on the page. I think when people think of Millie Marotta's work, they often think of this Animal Kingdom as the sole example of her illustrations, and many of the illustrations are smaller. The lines are sometimes too small to colour in individual sections. The pages are more cluttered, more zendoodly, which is something I'll talk a bit more about later. Pages often have words on them telling you to draw decorations or complete the image or to colour it a specific way. Her more recent books, such as Precious Planet, the illustrations are larger and cleaner. There's not really any parts that are too small to colour anymore. The pages are more cohesive, there's more full scenes. There's less standard portraits. Usually there's some kind of motif or added decoration on the page now. The wallpaper pages have been reduced in both amount and size, so now they are only single pages. And the zendoodly elements, which again is something that I will discuss a bit more on a later slide, are, I would say, less prevalent, but I will explain what I mean in a bit. And what I might do as well is just insert a quick clip here doing a brief flip through of both books. Okay, so moving on, the art style, how it's drawn. So believe it or not, Millie Marotta hand draws all of her pages. She starts with pencil and then she goes over her rough draft with a very fine steel nib pen. Then she scans it onto the PC and that is it. The only time she does any kind of digital editing is if she is creating repeat patterns, such as for a wallpaper or mandala. She typically draws the pages at size, so she doesn't blow them up or shrink them down. I believe in an interview before she has stated that she does that because she doesn't like how the size change can affect the appearance of the image. And obviously, what is drawn is typically intricate nature-based illustrations of flora and fauna, that's animals and plants, considered a form of realism because the anatomy is typically true to life and then it has like intricate / ornate embellishments added. So, are they considered highly detailed and are they considered Zen doodle? So, before we talk about how detailed or not detailed Millie Marotta is, I would just like to show you this scale of detail that I have put together based on my own book purchases, with the exception of Coco Wire there. I don't own that one. Oh, and I don't own Johanna Basford's Small Victories either. But the rest of them are all books. Oh no, wait, I do not own Shooting Star. I added those ones in because those are popular, well-known examples. But essentially, you've got very low detail in things like the Cute and Cozy books, then slightly more detail going into R.J. Hampson, and then like the Cider Mill Press books, and then I'd say medium detail, you've got things like Camilla DeRico, Lulu Mayo, Storm's Eye Design, the Marjorie Sarnat Creative Havens, Kanoko Agusa, Alexa C. Thompson, and then you're getting slightly more detailed with the form of more modern mythographics by Joseph Kattingbang, Rita Berman, and then that's sort of around the area that you get the more modern Millie Marottas, and then after that you start getting into quite highly detailed pages, such as the initial books by Kirby Rosanas, which had all the doodle art, and then yes, Millie Marotta's earlier works such as Animal Kingdom, and then you've got even more detailed in the forms of like Melpomene, and then the older mythographic, and of course Kirby Rosanas non-doodly pages with, for example, Fragile World, Alien Worlds, etc. So that is the detail scale in my view. Obviously, some people may beg to differ on this, and you are more than welcome to create your own detail scale, but this is mine. And I just want to add that detail does not mean difficulty or quality of artwork. So what do I mean by detail? Now, I did actually ask around how other people like to define detail, and one of the answers was number of different objects in an image. So there's actually some examples that I'm going to show you where there are lots of detail in the form of different objects in Rita Berman. So this is an image from The Lands of Little Adventures. This is Lulu Mayo, A Million Kittens. Lots of different objects in there. That is a double page, I do believe. And then, of course, you've got Kirby Rosanas, and this is a page from Geomorphia. Obviously, it's loads of fossils underground, so there are lots of little different objects. Whereas, if you compare that to Millie Marotta, there's not often a lot of different objects in an image because it's usually just one or two animals and maybe some plant life. So then, another way to define detail would be lots of small objects in an image. And here I've got an example of Melpomene. This is from Flower Fantasy, and as you can see there are lots and lots of tiny little flowers all over the place. You've got little butterflies, little clouds, little animals. You've got lots of little things, so there's lots of different objects and they're also very, very little, so that is very detailed. And then, of course, you've got Johanna Basford. This is a page from Rooms of Wonder. As you can see, there are lots of little objects. You've got little buttons, you've got balls of yarn, you've got little jars and spools of wool and general clutter. So yeah, that again, I would say is a very detailed page because there are lots of small objects and, of course, lots of different objects on that page. Now, for Millie Marotta, it would depend on how you view an object. So, for example, with her floral portraits, there's only the one animal on the page, but it is made up of lots of little flowers and leaves. So I would say it varies by image as to whether this definition of detail fits Millie Marotta. So then the next definition of detail is lots of thin lines / a lack of blank space. I believe the wording that Joe at Piggy Pens provided me with was to do with the ratios of line work to blank space. But again, I would just like to show you some examples where there's lots of thin lines or lack of blank space. So here we have an image from Joseph Cattingbang's mythographic dragon spell. There's lots of thin line work on here where he's added details to the trees and to the feathers, and like even the plants, it's just lots of little squiggles that show lots of detail and not a lot of blank space left over. And then a different example would be from the Victorian Fantasy Collection by Kurimori, which again you have, so you've got all of the lines in the hair, you've got all of the details on the dress and all the branches in the background, so it's thin lines and there's not a lot of blank space left on the page. And then another example is Lizzie Mary Cullen's. She's got a few books. There's Magical Journey, I think she's got a Christmas one, and then she's got a few that are based on France or Spain. I don't have any images within her book to show you, but based on the cover, you can see that there's lots of thin, detailed line work that fills up all of the space, so that there's nothing kind of left just empty other than this tiny bit in the middle where she's got the title page. So for Millie Marotta, I would say that there are quite a lot of thin lines in her work, but there is also a lot of blank space. So this is kind of a yes and no for Millie. So in all, if you were asking, is Millie highly detailed? I'd say in many cases, yes. She is a fairly detailed artist, but so are many other very popular artists. So then the next question that I wanted to raise is, does Millie Zendoodle? To answer that, we need to ask ourselves, what is Zendoodle? And the definition that Google gives me is a relaxing meditative form of drawing that uses repetitive structured patterns to create intricate artwork. Or in other words, patterns. So these are free to use stock images of Zendoodle patterns, and you can see that every section has got some kind of different pattern included in it. So there's not really any blank space left other than outside the realms of the Zendoodle. And another trait, each section has a different pattern. So for example, here you've got the triangles, and here you've got the lines, here you've got circles, here you've got swirls, here you've got triangles that then go into lines with just an individual line in them. Yeah, all the patterns are different to differentiate each section. Examples of colouring books that use Zendoodling are as follows. So you've got Enchanted Creatures by Lolita Iyer, Animorphia by Kirby Rosanas, Fairies in Dreamland by Denise Klett, and as previously mentioned, The Magical Journey by Lizzie Mary Cullen. And if we wanted to be more specific, we can look at some pages that are good examples of Zendoodle. So here we've got 3 ocean-themed pages, and you can see here we've got the seahorse, he's got all of the scales, and then you've got tiny little circles in these sections, you've got little lines in these sections. This whale has got lots of floral design in this one big section, and then a wave design at the bottom. These dolphins are in a Zendoodle background of various different types of leaves, and then the dolphins themselves have leaves and shapes within them. So those are quite intricate Zendoodle designs, and you might be surprised to know, or not, if you are familiar with her work, that these are all by Johanna Basford. So, does Millie Zendoodle? This is an Indian elephant from Animal Kingdom, one of her first books, and this is a walrus image, which is another one of her earlier works. Again, both are available for free to download on her website, and these are fairly good examples of Zendoodle. This elephant is full of patterns, and this walrus, he's got some floral patterns here, some leaf patterns. These are fairly Zendoodle patterns. But what about her more recent work? This image, which I showed you the coloured in version that I did earlier, is of a galaxy frog. Now, as you can see, you've got lots of small circles and stuff on the design. So is this Zendoodle? Well, not really. This is actually what the frog looks like in real life, including the strange armband patterns. And this is a pineapple. Again, is this Zendoodly or is it just a pineapple? And again, this is a very, I mean, it looks fairly Zendoodly. There's all these different designs and stuff on it. You've got circles here, cross-hatching here, lines and circles. So is this Zendoodle? Well, actually, that's what sea slugs look like. So does Millie Zendoodle? Yes, but not as much as you think. So now that we know what we're colouring, how do we colour it? And there are a few ways that people can approach our work, and I have split this into 4 types of focus. So the first type, type 1, a focus on individual parts. This is where you would colour all of the individual sections differently. Now that could be in different colours, or it could be that you've done different shading or gradient, but each individual section is differentiated. That is the definition of the type 1 focus. Now the type 2 focus, which is focused on sections, is similar to type 1. However, rather than differentiating each individual element, you instead focus on the section that it's a part of. So it's still a focus on the pattern, but not quite as much as before. And then the third type, type 3, is focused on form. So this is where instead of paying any attention to the patterns, you are paying attention to the overall shape of the animal and colouring it based on that. And then the fourth type is simply a combination of the above. So it's where maybe you'll have a focus on the form, but you'll still include some of the patterny elements. Now this is actually my preferred type. I do sometimes like to do type 3, and occasionally I will do type 2, but type 4 is actually my preferred way of colouring. If you are doing a type 1 or type 2 colouring focus, again, there's more ways that you can actually fill those out. So you've got, the straightforward flat colouring where each individual section is one colour. You've got gradient colouring where each section or part has a gradient that goes from one colour to another. And then you've got shading, which isn't quite the same as gradients, because although a gradient can go from light to dark or dark to light, shading is where you pick a light source and you base the darker areas and the lighter areas on that light source, rather than it just being a movement from one shade to the other. And please excuse the terribleness of the examples. I did just do these in MS Paint, which was the same with the rhinos that you were just looking at as well. You can mix and match. So you might have a flat gradient where each section or each individual element on a page is one colour, but over the course of the whole image, it creates a gradient. You might do a shaded gradient. So you've got your red to yellow gradient, but then you've also got your light source in there that shows the lighter and darker part of each section. Or like with the flat gradient, you might just do a shaded flat. You're still colouring in and focusing on each individual section, but you also add in the light and dark shading that you would if you added a light source. And I realise that these examples probably aren't the greatest, so I will, at the end of this presentation, be going through some real examples rather than just my terrible MS Paint renditions, so please bear with me. So then you've also got the colouring choice, so you can go for like a realistic colour palette, which I have done kind of for these flamingos, or you can go for something completely fantastical, which I've done for this snake. And again, this is a rose robin, which is so this is realistically, I say realistically coloured, it's a realistic colour palette, because this is the actual colours of a rose robin. They are different from the traditional British robin. And these are praying mantises. I don't know if you've ever seen a praying mantis, but they are not quite as colourful as this. So again, that's more on the fantastical side. And then, do you add a background or not? Well, they're optional. This is actually the first Millie Marotta page I ever completed. It has no background. This is one I did at the beginning of this year. And as you can see, I have added in a background of different coloured circles. So a background doesn't have to be particularly spectacular, and it doesn't have to be a thing at all if you don't want it to. Ways that you can get inspiration include checking out other people's completed pages, and a really good way to do this actually exists on Millie Marotta's own website. You can go to her colouring gallery, and there are pages and pages and pages of examples that people have submitted for public viewing that you can look through to see how you might want to colour a specific image, or to get just a general vibe as to how other people colour these pages. You can, of course, also use social media. If you type in Millie Marotta on Instagram, you will get so many results. And then, of course, there is the Millie Marotta Colouring Obsessionals Facebook group, where not only are there countless examples in the albums that people have uploaded of their own colourings, But every month there is also colouring challenges provided, and every other month there are buddy colours included. We do occasional colouring projects. So there's a constant source of ideas to encourage you to try new ways of colouring in the pages. So now I would like to just quickly go through a few images that are available on the colouring gallery on Millie Marotta's website, and we'll just discuss the methods that we've just gone through, like type 1, type 2, and colouring palettes, etc., just to show you someone other than my own artwork and how they do the colouring. Okay, so I have picked out a handful of images from the Millie Marotta Colouring Gallery, and we will start first with this one by Alice Carter. So this is the Common Raven, which is a partial body in a standard portrait format. The way it's been coloured is primarily type 1 with a focus of flat and shaded colouring, which you can see here. There is a bit of a gradient here and there, particularly this area here, because you've got the black that's going into the different colours, and it's primarily, well, it's hybrid of a realistic and fantastical colour palette, because obviously a raven is black, but if you catch it in the light, then it does actually get all of these different colours. So it's an imaginative interpretation, and there is no background added to this one. So next up, we've got Eileen Chu with the Mirrored Chameleons motif portrait. This is primarily a type 2 focus with a combination of shaded and gradient colouring. It's got more of a realistic palette, but with added splashes of colour for visual interest. And again, there's no background that's been added. Next up, we've got Angelika HM with a floral full body portrait of a crocodile. This is a type 2 focus with flat colouring or shaded flat colouring, depending on how you interpret these areas here. She's added a self-drawn scenic background. So next up, we've got, I think your name is pronounced Cherry, apologies if it's not, Cherry Mason. And this is a standard headshot of a raccoon. It is type 4 because the white bits here are type 3 form focus, but then these darker areas are emphasizing the pattern still. The color palette, as you can see, is based on the American flag, and there is a self-drawn basic stripy background included as well. So next up, we've got Deborah Lyons, and this is half of a double wallpaper page with standard full body birds of paradise. This is another type 4 page, but it's primarily focused on type 3, which is the overall form of each bird. There is flat gradient on the wings, and she has added a nice watercolor background as well. This is another image from Deborah, and this one is half of one of the Simple V detailed double pages, and it is a full body motif page of a grasshopper, believe it or not. So this was a type 2 focus, as she has kept some of these sections in. However, she's filled them in with her own patterns in the form of the circles. So you could argue type 3 maybe, as she's only really kept the form of the grasshopper. I still can't believe that's a grasshopper, to be honest with you. And as you can see, it's a fantastical flat gradient colour palette with added watercolour circles for the background. So next up we have Heather Mitchell. Now you could argue this is either a full scene or a standard portrait based on whether you think the tree counts as an environment or not, but these are full body standard sloths. It's a type 3 colour focus, and this is because this was actually part of a colour challenge from the Facebook group. Can't remember if it was winter jumpers or tropical t-shirt, and I think they might be winter jumpers, and she's added faint background as well. Next up we've got Irina Herman. She's also known as Black Aneri on YouTube, and I think you can even watch a video of her colouring in this page. This is a wallpaper headshot of African elephants. It is a type 3 focus because the focus is on the form of the fully coloured elephant. She's made a stylistic choice to only colour a cross section of the wallpaper page, using the uncoloured areas as a background. Next up we have JB, and this is another partial wallpaper page, this time of flying fish. JB has used type 1 flat colouring for the coloured fish and a grayscale gradient for the rest of the fish. And again, there's been another stylistic choice to only focus on one part of the wallpaper page and using the rest as the background. Next up we have LJ, and this is a floral full body portrait of some manatees. This I initially thought was a type 1 focus, but if you actually look, the individual segments in each section are all in a uniform colour, so this is actually a type 2, and it is flat coloured, so it's a flat gradient because each section is an individual colour, but the overall body is going in a rainbow gradient. And next up we have Marcus Boucher. Now this is a standard headshot of a tiger. This is type 3 form focus, and you can tell by the ears, because if you look here there's a shaded dip which ignores the pattern shapes, and Marcus has gone for a realistic colour palette and no background. Next up we have Nicola Welch, and this is a floral full body portrait of a pine marten, and I think this is a type 4 focus, a hybrid of type 2 because there's a focus on the sections, and type 3 because if you pay attention to this area here, there is a focus on the form where the lower body and what would be darker areas of the pine marten have been coloured in darker, and then the upper body areas which would be lighter have been coloured in lighter, but the pattern has still been emphasised particularly on the tail, which is why I say it's type 4. And Nicola has also added in some grass and colouring for the background. And then next up we have Rachel Cameron, and this is another one of the mirrored motif chameleons. This I would say is a type 4 focus because of you've got this highlighted area and shadowing which shows that the focus is actually on the form, but then all these purple sections show that she's still wanted to highlight the particular sections of Millie's line work. And then next up we have Ramona Kreiter, and this is a humpback whale full body motif, and as you may have guessed, or hopefully would have guessed if I've been teaching this correctly, this is a type 3 focus. The focus is entirely on the form of the whale with a nice galaxy colour palette. I mean, you can still see parts of the pattern, but its presence doesn't mean it's been adhered to. It's just not been covered up fully. So then next up we've got Sarin Pinto. Apologies if I mispronounced that. So this is I think it's called an Pika full body portrait, and it is quite easily identifiable as a type 3 again, as the patterns are entirely gone in favour of doing a realism style approach. So this shows the difference between what is a realistic colour palette and what is full on realism, because you can see here like Sarin has added in all like the fur texture and everything, so they've gone for a completely realistic style rather than just the colour palette. And then next up we have Toby Is. I think that's how your surname is pronounced, Toby. I apologise if that's not correct. And this is a full body mirror motif of some sandhill cranes. Now Toby is pretty well known for doing a type 2 focus, and here there's a combination of shaded, flat and gradient colouring, whilst also making use of alternating gradients, particularly here, and alternating shading, kind of like here, in order to help differentiate each section a bit more and to create a bit more visual interest. Here's a couple more of Toby's pictures. It's a very identifiable style that I can always tell when it's a Toby picture. Toby produces a lot of guides on advanced colouring techniques in the Facebook group, and has been a fantastic help in providing feedback on my Millie presentation that I did earlier. And then lastly, we have this image by Valeria Stepanova, and this is a standard full body dragonfly. I would say this is a type 3 focus, although it can be hard to tell when there's not much body to go on. The ripples part of the background was included in the original line work. Valeria has used pastels to make what, in my opinion, is a simple but striking background. So that is everything I wanted to show you on the colouring gallery. However, I do fully recommend going through and having a browse yourself, because there is such a huge variety of coloured images on here, and there are a number of different styles and focuses, from fantastical to realistic, rainbows, specific colour palettes, different mediums used. There's absolutely everything you could possibly think of, and it is a stunning resource if you wanted to get inspiration for Millie Marotta Colouring Pages. So yeah, that is everything from me for this. I hope that the combination of my presentation and breakdown of colouring styles and showcase of various completed colouring pages has encouraged you perhaps to give Millie Marotta another try. Like I said at the beginning, if she's not your cup of tea, she's not your cup of tea, and that is completely valid. It's not on me to tell you that your opinion is right or wrong. However, I do hope that in watching this, you may feel more encouraged to try out her artwork than perhaps you did before. So thank you for watching, and I would very much appreciate your feedback in the comments down below. Bye everyone!